Welcome to this hands-on video for Modal SKULPT, the newest member of the Modal family. SKULPT is a 4-voice, polyphonic, programmable synthesizer with up to 128 patch memories on board. Simply press the preset button and touch one of the 16 keypads to load a preset. Up to 8 banks of 16 sounds can be stored, giving a total of 128 sounds. Let's load an initialized patch and start playing with the sound creation capabilities of SKULPT. There are 2 sets of oscillator waveforms we can adjust. We are sweeping here between sine, triangle, saw, square and pulse width waveforms on oscillator 1. Now adjust oscillator 2. Notice how you can hear filtered noise at the far end of the oscillator waveform setting. Let's now balance them. SKULPT has a really easy way of detuning between the oscillators. Simply access the tune function by pressing the shift key to lock the front panel and then turn the wave to or tune knob. The intervals have been set to be easy to get musical results quickly. You can go up and down 3 octaves. There's also fine tune control for the oscillators. At the moment, all of SKULPT's oscillators are phased to be in line with each other. But the spread control on the front panel lets us change the phasing. You can hear the spread control detune the oscillators away from each other. After the halfway point, spread snaps the tuning of oscillators to musical intervals relative to each other, introducing rich harmonic content to the sound. And using the FM function, we can use the output of oscillator 1 to modulate the frequency of oscillator 2. FM is controlled by using the shift function and the oscillator next knob. Again, we can use the tune knob to detune the oscillators and change the harmonics played. SKULPT also has a ring modulator. Now let's take a look at some of the features of the filter in Modal SKULPT. We'll load an initialized patch. Selecting a saw wave on oscillator 1 will now close the filter's cutoff down. Notice the LED is changing on the keypad to indicate the change in cutoff level. SKULPT's filter is a morphing filter capable of changing its nature from low pass through band pass and on to high pass. Notice how the cutoff's behaviour is very different as we morph. SKULPT's filter is self-resonating, and when resonance is set to higher levels, this really gives the cutoff some bite. And when combined with SKULPT's distortion, which shapes the waves going into the filter, this comes together to make some amazing sound creation possibilities. In order to shape and control the filter's behaviour, SKULPT has 3 envelopes, one dedicated for the filter, one for amplitude generator, and one for the modulation matrix. First, let's work with the amplitude envelope generator, or AEG for short. Attack and release on the sound enable us to change the nature of the sound's transients. And now we can use the filter's own envelope generator to shape how the filter opens and contours during play. let's contour the filter's transients with attack and release. Now let's use another of SKULPT's features, the Arpeggiator, to demonstrate the effect of the envelopes across the sound. Now let's look at how the mod envelope enables us to contour the effects of the modulations that we assign. Just as we did with the filter EG, we need to turn up the modulation EG's effects on the modulation sources. Let's set up a simple modulation sending to the oscillator waveform 1. By giving a little more attack, you can hear the effect of the modulation on the waveform as we hold a note. That's how simple it is to set up routings in SKULPT. LFOs are a vital part of sound design on synthesizers, and assigning them to where you want is very simple with SKULPT. First, let's select a good waveform on oscillator 1 and then adjust the resonance a small amount. Now we'll simply assign the LFO by pressing the LFO assign button to the cutoff, simply by turning the cutoff knob to the amount you want. Now we can increase the rate that the LFO will cycle at. The LFO rate knob, when applied with a shift key, also changes the waveform of the LFO. The LFO waveform also morphs as it's adjusted. Each LFO has a separate depth control to control how much the LFO wave will peak and fall and how this adjusts the destination. Now let's assign LFO 2. It has its own dedicated selection button on the front panel. Let's assign LFO 2 again to filter cutoff. You can see the amount the LFO will apply to the filter's cutoff being shown as a value on the LEDs on the keypad. As you continue to turn the LFO rate knob, the rate now starts to synchronize with the frequency of the note played. And remember, SKULPT is a true polyphonic synth. We can play multiple notes with the LFOs in sync. Note, LFO2 can modulate at much higher rates than LFO1, well into audio range. SKULPT has 3 keyboard modes to control the voices: the mono, duo and poly. In mono, of course, SKULPT only plays 1 notes and all 32 of its oscillators are aligned together. Think of it as all 4 of the polyphonic voices being stacked on top of each other. In duo you can play 2 notes. And of course, in poly we can play all 4 voices simultaneously at the same time. SKULPT also features a multi-function glide control, including automatic polyphonic portamento. If the glide control is turned in the opposite direction, only notes played with legato will now glide. A really useful chord memory enables us to set up a chord by playing on the keyboard, and then shifting the octave plus will put the chord into memory. Now the keyboard plays the chord transposed to whatever key you play on the SKULPT. Chord mode can be deactivated by pressing shift and octave plus again. SKULPT also has note sustain and transpose controls on the front panel. SKULPT has a fully featured arpeggiator built in, which is accessed from its own dedicated key on the front panel. Again, we can use the sustain feature of the keyboard by pressing Shift and up to hold the notes being played. Now, by pressing and holding the Up button, the keypad has additional features that control the arpeggiator settings. Note the text in grey on each of the keys. We can change the division between the arpeggio notes, then the direction of the arpeggio, and even the range of octaves over which the arpeggio will be played. All these can be done on the fly, giving great performance controls. SKULPT features a digital delay with 3 editable parameters that can be easily accessed on the front panel. First, let's turn up the delay amount. Now adjust the delay feedback. And finally, play around with the delay time. Delay time can also be synced to MIDI clock. Now, let's use some more extreme of these settings. Modal SKULPT features a built-in sequencer with some really cool performance features. Let's take a look at these. Pressing the dedicated Start, Stop and Shift, we enter record mode. Note how the LEDs are scrolling across the keypad. The arpeggiator can be recorded as a series of notes into the sequencer. We can play additional notes on the keyboard. Parameters can be recorded into the sequencer, enabling live performance inputs to be recorded alongside note data. Let's first of all morph the waveform. Now I'll apply it to spread. There's still room to record additional note data and play it live over the top. SKULPT has superb modulation capabilities for a synthesizer of this size. Up to 8 different destinations can be mapped into slots, routed up to 37 different destinations. As with most things on SKULPT, setting up modulations is very straightforward and accessible from the front panel. To assign velocity, simply press the button, then turn the knob for the parameter you wish to edit. In this case, we'll apply velocity to spread. We can also assign the mod wheel input from an external keyboard to control the filter cutoff. In exactly the same way. You'll notice that the number 2 LED is flashing, showing we're now editing the second modulation slot. You can see all of the active modulation slots by pressing the Shift and Assign key, and using the keys on the keypad you can enable or disable each of the 8 modulation slots. Using the keys 9 to 16, you can quickly clear each of the modulation slots you've set up in a patch. It's very quick and easy to see what's going on with the modulation in SKULPT. Thank you for watching our video. I hope it's given you some more insight into the power and flexibility of modal SKULPT.